This is Salam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio. Broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Salam alaikum, good evening, and welcome to Wealth Made Simple. I'm your host today, Kieran Bateman, and hopefully Shaz will be joining me. He's currently stuck in traffic. First world problems, I know. But hopefully you'd like to join me too. You can call the studio. You can get in touch on 01733 602 133, or you can text us on 07411 191 062, or you can comment on any of the live streams on Facebook, YouTube, X, or Twitch. This week on Wealth Made Simple, we are continuing the conversation that we had last week about the state of the economy in the UK. And I know we went down a number of different rabbit holes last week, so I'm not going to apologise for that. This is what you have come to expect from us. Let's be honest. But until Shaz arrives, I will be referring to my notes and go through what some of the problems are that we see as businessmen, as entrepreneurs, and as general people in the UK about where our economy is, where it's headed. Where is there anything we can do to fix it? Because that in and of itself would be the ultimate goal. And I hear this a lot, and I'm sure some people have even said it. Tax the rich. Okay, well, and don't get me wrong, I understand that point of view. Tax the rich more. Stop giving people safe tax havens. Stop them using loopholes. Things like that. And yes, to some of that, but overall, unfortunately, what people that's a very short-sighted, in my opinion, that's a very short-sighted way of dealing with it. Just tax the rich more, because it won't work. Fundamentally, it won't work, because unfortunately, these are the people who are the policymakers, the business owners, the entrepreneurs, the people in charge, the people at the top. If you start taxing them more, they're just going to increase the costs elsewhere to recoup that cost. And that's going to affect me, it's going to affect you, it's going to affect everyone at home. Yeah, wherever you are in the economic chain, it's going to affect you. And we see that time and time again. If you've got enough money to be part of the system rather than feeding from the system, you have enough money to influence the system. If I go to the shops tomorrow to buy some fish and chips, for example, and that fish and chips cost me £5, just for argument's sake, £5. And then, but it's a chain of restaurants, and the man at the top is earning £1 million a year, just for argument's sake. And then the government says, okay, well, we're going to tax you more because you're earning so much. It's going to go, okay, fish and chips now cost £10. And it is fundamentally that simple. Yeah. And yeah, he'll work it out and he'll go, okay, you're going to take an extra 500,000 off me. So my profit is now 500,000. That's less than it was last year. Last year it was 1 million. Okay, how do I make this back up to 1 million or more? Oh, I charge more. Okay, well, let's charge more then. And suddenly the economy, the cost of everything in the economy starts going up because everybody takes their cut. And, you know, we've seen this in the housing market. We see this in the business market all the time until it reaches a breaking point. I mean, we saw that over during the lockdowns, during COVID. The cost of petrol, it just kept getting more and more and more until it got to a point where people stopped buying it. And then the cost went down a bit. Now, I've heard the conspiracy theories that, you know, that was just a test to see how much people, but it's not. You don't have a choice. But when it comes down to a choice of how much are you realistically willing to spend, there are people who will make you spend that amount, the most amount you can. And that is what inflates all the prices of everything, because enough people are willing to spend that amount, which means the people who don't have as much don't get as much rewards for what they've worked hard for. I think the answer is ironically and unintuitively, lowering taxes, not just for the rich, across the board, lowering taxes, but making it more streamlined, making it more straightforward. If you took a company A, and said, okay, this is how much this company costs to run, with staffing costs, with electricity, utilities, all the rest of it, and at the end of it, the product that we provide, I am charging £100 for. And we only sell one product. We'll keep it simple. Only sell one product. And that one product, I am making £10 on. Every product, every unit we sell, I make £10. Okay. So the cost to everything before profit is £90. And this person's making, charging £100. I don't think anyone would say that's unfair. But that's a very simplified version of what people are saying when they say just tax the rich. The way that increasing taxes on entrepreneurs, on businessmen and stuff like that, the problem with doing that is you encourage people to leave the country. You encourage businesses to not have their home base within the UK. And the second, that opens up a whole nother complicated issue of, borders and where you pay tax and all the rest of it. But fundamentally, you're not encouraging or inspiring people to start businesses. People don't start businesses if they don't become entrepreneurs. They stop employing people. There isn't any jobs for people to do, because there will always be people that need a job, and there will always be people that want to start a business. If you make it so inhospitable for people to start a business as a country, then they won't. They'll go to America to start a business. They'll go to the UAE. They'll go to China. They'll go to Japan. Any country that promotes entrepreneurship. You don't promote entrepreneurship by making tax on tax on tax on tax on tax on tax on tax. And I think that there are too many loopholes within the tax system. There are too many ways of getting around things, but only if you've got the money to do it. So the rich will always, the super wealthy will always remain super wealthy because they can afford to pay a professional to find those loopholes for them. And that I think is the primary point we should look at to improve the economy, is not increase prices everywhere, reduce prices, reduce tax, but streamline it. If you streamline it and say, for example, blanket, everything you do, 20% tax. 20% tax on your food, 20% tax on your pay, 20% tax on, doesn't matter if you're earning £1 million, you get 20% tax. It's 200 grand. 20% tax across the board. Suddenly you'll eliminate any way to get around it and go, yes, well, I'll pay my 20% over here for this bit and this bit, but this bit is, for example, comes under a different mandate. So this comes under, an executive license of whatever, and that sort of thing. I'm not sure it exists. It probably does, but I don't think it does. But I'm just using it as an example. Oh, so I don't have to pay tax on that because that's tax exempt. Oh, and I'm going to use that to ring fence this bit here so I can have this tax free and this. Well, it's too complicated, and it's so complicated that people don't understand it. If people don't understand it, they become wary of it. They become scared of it. They step away from it. They stop engaging with it. And that brings us all the way back round to, if you simplified it, you make it easy for everyone to understand. Second, everyone understands it. They know that when they get paid, 20% is going to tax. They know that their boss, when the money comes into the company, 20% is going to tax. 20% of their salary is going to tax. 20% of their saving, their investments. They're paying. I'm not saying eliminate tax entirely. I mean, let's be honest. We'd all like that. We'd all like to live in a country where we don't pay any tax. That would be lovely. But I don't see it happening, realistically. And then start right at the beginning with education. At school, I don't know about anyone else who's listening, and, by all means, get in touch, let me know. But I was not taught anything about tax. It was mentioned a couple of times, maybe, but it wasn't taught. Okay, so you understand that you've got to pay tax. Okay, that's this lesson over. That's your lesson on tax. Well, hang on, this is a massive subject. This is a real deep subject. But we're teaching our children that they have to pay tax. Okay, and that's the end of it. Now, if you are just going to go to work for 50 years at this stage, let's be honest, 50, 60 years, and just have one job, which is unlikely in today's world, but let's say you do. You have one job, and that's the only job you ever do. You don't get higher up in the ranks. You stay where you are, but you get the inflationary pay increases and what have you, and you're comfortable with that. You will pay this roughly the same amount of tax your entire life, and you probably don't need to worry about it. Really? But what about the amount of tax that's being put on your food, or on the fuel for your car, or everything you do gets taxed some way or another? Council tax, road tax, insurance tax, VAT, value-added tax for those listening that don't know. And I'm assuming everyone does, but assumption is the mother of... Anyway, everything you do comes with a tax bracket. So to ignore tax is to kind of sit there and bury your head in the sand. And that's why I think it should start at education level. Start with the children. Teach them financial responsibility early. Get their heads around it. Get them around the idea that, I forget the figure, but the amount of debt that there is in this country is astronomical. And people aren't going to be able to pay it back, so it's going to get written off. Well, when it gets written off, who ends up ultimately writing it off? Taxpayers. It gets written off by the government. Well, if the government's got to write off debt for people who are unable to pay it, the companies are still getting paid. The government's now paying it. So if the government's now paying it, who do you think's footing the bill? Taxpayers. And that vicious circle is what is slowly degrading and destroying our economy. Years ago, we were in the top 3, I believe, of the G8. I think we're now number 5 or 6 in the G8 unit, which means as a global economy, we have dropped from being one of the strongest powers in the world to not. And that's massive. And we're still sliding. We're still sliding down. Is the new administration across the pond going to influence or affect that? Wait and see. Hold this space. But, alleged tariffs and stuff like that. I don't know whether any of these are going to come into play or affect us directly, but they're going to affect the global market. They're going to affect the global stage, and there is going to be a shift in how things are done on that level, and that absolutely will affect us. They'll affect us as a country, and I believe it will affect us all individually. So it's worth keeping an eye on that sort of thing. I think that because there have been no incentives for people to start businesses, be entrepreneurs, to upskill. We've had certain skill shortages within the UK. It's not inviting for people to go and do certain jobs because the pay's rubbish or you can only just get by. I mean, it comes to something when if you're on minimum wage, there are people who are out of work that live better than you do. Now, I'm not saying everyone, but do we think that's part of the problem, is that it's more comfortable to live at home and not try than it is to, find something you're passionate about and work towards it? That has a massive impact and a massive cost associated with it that we like to overlook. Now, I'm not saying get rid of, at no point am I saying we should get rid of help for the people that need it and things like that. But I am saying it's something that as a country we should look at to ascertain what is the best way going forwards. Because there are people out there who don't qualify for certain help that need it, and there are people that shouldn't qualify for help but get a lot more than they need. And that's something that I choose not to make a too much of a deep comment on, but I don't know what the answer is the fundamental point I'm making. But there's got to be a better way. And I don't think that what we have right now is working. You know, when people can live comfortably their entire lives without having to work a day because everybody else pays for them, I personally think everyone should have a job at some point. If they've got somebody else in the house that's willing to keep them and that is earning enough to pay for, absolutely fine, great, no problem. But if you've left school at 16 and never worked a day because you found a loophole in a system, I mean, first of all, congratulations for finding the loophole. I respect that. But everyone else is paying for your lifestyle. Is that fair? Do people need more help in getting to work, more help upskilling, more help learning what they can do, and it needs to be less barriers to entry. So when people, and this is my favorite current pet hate, I think that interviews should be done blind. I think that when HR gets a CV, the CV should be remove the name, remove the address, and it should just be the employer gets to look at essentially a nameless CV, so they have no idea whether the applicant is male or female, or any ethnicity, any background like that. They just look at it and they look at the skills. They look at what they are comparing against the job for and go, yeah, that person looks like they'll fit. Okay, cool. And then they get an interview, and the first interview is what should always be, in this day and age, a digital interview with a voice modulator, so that you still don't know whether the person you are hiring is male, female, any ethnicity, any religion, any creed. That takes all bias out of it, in my opinion. And so then, third stage, you get to meet the person, because ultimately, let's be honest, if they've got to that stage, you like them, they've given you good answers, you've spoken to them digitally. Now you're not really seeing if they are good enough for the job. You've already made that decision a lot of the time. Now you're seeing if they'll fit with the team. Well, now it is about personality. Not everyone fits with every team. But they've got to the stage of getting the job and just making sure they fit with the team, which if they've got that far, they probably will, let's be honest, to give you that final kick over the edge. But it takes all the bias out of it. But I think there should also be more help with people upskilling into different areas. Because, look, we've gone down a rabbit hole, haven't we? We've gone down a rabbit hole about education and about employment. It's still related to the economy. Shaz will be fine. He'll jump in on this. It'll be fine. But a lot of people just want to do the bare minimum, and absolutely fine. You want to wake up, go to work, get a salary, go home. That's absolutely fine. But I would like to live in a world where people get to follow their passions, and everyone gets encouraged to follow their passion. Now, not all passions are financially good. Some sectors pay more than other sectors. You want to work in IT right now and in AI development. There's probably a lot of money there. In fact, I know there's a lot of money there. But you've got to be really good. You've got to be at the cutting edge. You've got to know your shtick. If you want to work, if you enjoy organising and cleaning and be a professional organiser, is there as much money in that as there is in AI development right now? Probably not. But does that mean that you should be discouraged from doing it because that's what you ultimately enjoy and that's what fulfills you? Absolutely not. And there should be, Not, and I'm not just talking about minimum wage here. I'm talking about the economy as a whole. You should be able to afford to save, buy a house, and live at the minimum wage, because the economy has prices arranged to the point that that is doable. When I was growing up, I grew up in a household where you only needed one parent to work, and you could still afford to raise 3 kids, send them to school, clothe them, feed them. And kids ain't cheap, let's be honest. We know this. So, and now the thought of, there's just me and my partner, and the thought of only one of us working, you've got to tighten your belts. And there's 2 of us, no kids, and we don't live in a big house. But prices keep going up. And that, I think, is fundamentally one of the problems with the way the economy is structured right now, is that it's all about capitalist economy making as much profit as you can at the expense of the people paying for it. And that is I've got no problem with people making profit. Absolutely none. I encourage people to make as much profit as they can, but it should be ethical profit. It should not be at the expense of the people paying for your profits. And I think that's where we kind of fall foul now in business, as a not just a country, but as a globe, as the entirety of the earth, is profits at all costs rather than ethical profits that aren't going to end up destroying someone's lives or making them pay for something they can't really afford. There's a company in America, and this was a good few years ago. CEO was going through they went through a rough financial patch. So what he did was he increased the salary of everybody working for him and gave them Fridays off. 4-day work week, increased salary. And, people told him he was crazy and that, there's a reason that he was struggling financially. 6 months, he was doing better than he'd ever done. His company hadn't increased prices. They'd kept doing what they were doing. He'd kept everybody on. He'd increased their salary. He'd increased workplace happiness. Ultimately, he'd given people more time with their families. He'd give them more ability to spend that time with their families because they were better off financially. And the number of sick days reduced. The number of mental health days reduced. The amount that people had to do was reduced. But everybody turned up early. People stayed late. People put in extra. People worked harder because they felt recognized and valued. And like I say, in 6 months, he was no longer struggling financially. The company wasn't struggling financially. The company was doing better than it has ever done. And it cost him his risk. He risked it. And don't get me wrong, that was absolutely a risk. But it's not just about profits at all costs, is the point. And that's, I think, something that's been missed in the economy today. So where was I going with that? I was going somewhere with that. There was a point I was going to make. Not just about how, profits at all costs. I can't remember. I normally have Shaz to go down a rabbit hole with me, but he is stuck in he is still stuck in traffic. He's been stuck in traffic for the last hour. I know where I'd rather be. I'm warm here and doing something I enjoy. That was it. Doing something you enjoy. See, I knew there was a segue somewhere. See, there's always a path. But that's just it. It's now, again, another story. I know I'm going off on stories. People talk about burnout all the time, and they talk about how their job is stressful. They need some personal time. They need they get burnt out and stuff like that. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I hear it. I get it. I don't understand it. And that's not me trying to be flippant. It's that what I do, I love. I enjoy what I do. So yes, there are stressful days, there are stressful times, but it's not anything that I'm not expecting. And so no matter how stressful it is, I'm still enjoying what I do. And because I enjoy what I do, I can work 7 days a week, every week of the year, and it doesn't bother me too much. And that, I think, is something that everybody needs to find, is find the thing that you really enjoy doing. Because, we've all heard it said, if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's really, really true. And I will link that back to the economy, because the more people doing what they enjoy, the happier your people will be, the happier the workforce will be, the harder they work, the more the economy will grow. Boom. There we go. That was my best impression of Al Murray, pub landlord. No, I'm joking. But we're just about to take a quick break, and I hope to see you on the other side. And hopefully we'll have Shaz too. Until then.
You're listening to Salam Radio, and it's now time for Isha Azan.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم، وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي
Peterborough's community radio station, Salam Radio, 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Wealth Made Simple. Once again, I am still on my own. I'm still awaiting Shaz. I was hoping he'd arrive during the break, but he didn't. I'm lonely without him. Anyway, you can always get in touch with me and get in touch with the show. You can call us on 01733 602 133. You can text the studio on 07411 191 062, or you can comment on any of our live streams on Facebook, YouTube, X, or Twitch. This week on Wealth Made Simple, we are talking about the economy and what we can do to fix it. Sorry, I'm just pushing around buttons on my phone trying to find my notes because I closed them down during the break and then realised that I need to reopen them. So that's what that pause was. So apologies for that. Sadly, I do not know this script off by heart. I know what I'm talking about, just not off by heart. I need some notes. So you will forgive me for that, please. Anyway, as we were saying, what was I saying before the break? I was talking about how if you enjoy what you do, it's never a day's work in your life. And that if you can find that sort of passion, doesn't matter what it is, and you can live a good life doing it, then yeah, that will only increase the economy because people will start be more willing to put the work in for it. I think that one of the biggest areas that we have issues with regards to the natural state of the economy as it stands right now is that there's a lot of investment that needs to happen and not enough money to do the investment. We need investment in the NHS. We need investments in school. I think schools as an overall thing, we'll probably do this next week. Schools, the UK. Do we think they're a little outdated? Because schools were originally designed to teach you to arrive at 9, finish at 5, sit in lines and go, which is exactly what people used to do in factories and in offices, sit in lines and just arrive and turn up, which is not what we do in this day and age. So I think there does need to be a minor look at that. But I'm no expert on schoolings. I'll have to do a lot of research on that because I could be talking utter rubbish. I don't think I am, but I could be. And this is just one man's opinion. But we need to encourage investment overall in the areas that need it. You know, research and development. We need to become a global leader in technological competitive in the competitive environment that is there, because that will encourage companies to come to us as a country to have their offices and stuff, and that will create jobs, which increases the in government. You know, for example, South Korea invests heavily in research and development. They invest 4.6 of their gross domestic GDP. So they've got a massive turnover in technology, in learnings, and they bring the best people from around the world to work in those locales. Now, some people work remotely, some people work, but the point is they're making the investments now for future dividends, which is something that we're not doing so much of. I think that something that we kind of touched on last week, but we didn't really, is after the housing crisis of 2008, everything started shifting south for our economy as a country. And if you actually look at it statistically, it's, it probably started a bit before that, but it really kicked into overdrive from about that point onwards. Is that we then decided that we wanted to step away from a European community. That doesn't just include the country, that includes businesses as well. And so now we pay more in tariffs and more in taxes across Europe, which we could have avoided by not being dumb. Just my opinion. But I think that sort of thing is preyed heavily on people's biases and their views and stuff, and that was something that in today's global economy, you can't take yourself out of that. You know, we're a first world country, we're a global superpower. You know, despite what is happening in this country, but we are still a global superpower, and we've had a tantrum and gone, no, we don't want to be part of that club anymore. What? What next? You're going to say, no, we don't want to be part of world economics. Come on now. Have a word with yourself. Again, just one man's opinion. Don't mean to offend anyone. If I have offended anyone, I do apologise. But I think that was one of the dumbest decisions we made as a country in the last 50 years. I'll say it. Just because of all of the weaknesses that it has highlighted. Yes, we needed to look at the terms and conditions and maybe, you know, revise what we were paying comparative to what we were getting. Absolutely. I'm not saying, you know, follow blindly, but I am saying that, you know, throwing your toys out the pram and having a temper tantrum was not the answer. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all evolves going forwards, because we're still unpacking everything that went on from that. But you can't just, you know, hop over to Europe anymore and pick up some produce or start doing business with them. There's a whole more amount of red tape now than there used to be, and that's a problem for businesses because we are a tiny, tiny island, grand scheme of things. I think England fits into Africa like 100 times over. 25 million square. I think it's about 100 times. Now that's terrifying. I mean, Africa, the second biggest continent in the world after Asia, and we're tiny, and we're small but mighty. I mean, good things come in small packages. That's what the other half tells me when she wants a new diamond. What can I do? Not buy her a diamond. No, that's not true. But overall, you're looking at tariffs and stuff. You're doing things that we don't hold control over and we don't hold power over. And that has affected us negatively as an economy because we're not a great producer as a country. Our country is too small to be that self-sustaining. Unfortunately, we've got, you know, some good farmland. Yep. We can make potatoes, we can make carrots. You know, everything we do farming wise, we do very, very well. But there are other countries that do farming just as well. You know, New Zealand, there are more sheep in New Zealand than there are people. So I think you know, if you're going to have, you know, eat some lamb, you get New Zealand lamb. You know, there's more of them. Because there's more of them, they can sell it cheaper. Because they can sell it cheaper, simple economics, right? You sell it cheaper. Where are you going to buy it from? Are you going to buy it from the English producer who potentially is more expensive? Or are you going to buy it from somewhere that's got an excess, so it's cheap? And therein lies, ultimately, you know, the problem with all of that is that transportation costs are so low for other countries, you know, because they get cheaper oil. Why do they get cheaper oil? Well, they don't take as much tax on it for a start, so the government doesn't take quite as large a tax. It sounds like I'm really drilling in on that, doesn't it? This episode. Tax bad. No, tax is not bad. Tax is good. I think it's just the way it's implemented is, let's say, questionable. You know, and accountability. I'm coming back to tax now. Sorry, sidetrack. My brain's bouncing around. Going back to tax for a second. There needs to be accountability by the tax makers about what they do and when they make a mistake. Because right now there isn't. If they make a mistake, they still stay in office for another 3.5, 4 years. Anyway, moving on. I'm not going down that rabbit hole tonight. But maybe one day. If you ask in the comments, I'll jump down that rabbit hole. No, no comment. Okay, I'll continue then. We should be encouraging companies to come to the UK, enhance public and private spending and investment in technology and the infrastructure, create policies that improve trade relationships rather than drive them away. I don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, with the new policies that are coming out across the pond. They might affect us favorably. They might affect us non-favorably. We shall wait and see. But in the early 2020s, after that, the virus, energy prices went up. There were disruptions in process chains. There were increased costs of imported goods. So inflation went through the roof. Core inflation has been persistently high since then, and that will affect everyone. If we can get those under control, and here's the thing: you look at they say, oh well, after Russia invaded Ukraine, prices went through the roof because the cost of energy went up. Did it though? I'm not saying I'm not calling our government a liar, but I am saying that look at the average cost for gas and electricity in France, Germany, Italy, Spain. I'm just saying, it's not what we pay, and they don't have a homegrown company that is global that supplies petroleum products to the world, like British Petroleum. Yet somehow they managed to keep those prices down. Food for thought, that. Is it because their countries, certainly in France, I know for a fact, help subsidise the cost of the utilities that are necessary for people to live? Maybe. The trains are cheaper too. They're not privately run either. I think we might be onto something here. You can't make... The problem is there is not it. Competition is great at keeping prices affordable. If there is no competition, the monopoly has to be run by the public so that prices stay low, because that's what's best for the people. There isn't enough competition in, for example, the energy sector to reduce prices, because there's maybe 10 companies supplying. If there was 100 companies supplying, well, suddenly you've got competition. Suddenly it behooves you to keep prices low. But whilst there's very little competition, and ultimately, 66 million people in the UK, 70 odd million people in the UK, let's say half of them are children, just for argument's sake. This is just some very quick maths here for you. Half of them are children, under 18, not paying their own bills. Okay, so now you're left with 35 people. So, let's round it down. 30 million people paying utilities to 10 companies. I'm going to pause for a second there. 30 million people, potentially. And like I say, I've got no hard facts or figures on this. But if you've got 30 million people to divide it by 10, well, each company is responsible for 3 million people. If it costs them, say, £100 a year to bring in that electricity, that's probably not far from the truth. And they're charging you £3,000 a year. They're making, after all costs, maybe £2,000 a year profit on each person. Is it any wonder that their profit margins are in the billions when they don't need to be? But arguably, and I hear people say, well, there should be a cap on how much they should make and all that. Okay, so if we put a cap on it, they're not paying corporation tax to the tune of billions anymore. They're paying corporation tax to the tune of millions. So it's not in the government's best interests, from a tax perspective, to put a cap on it. And it's not in their interests as a business to not take as much profit as they can. But that does mean that we at the bottom, who have to pay the bill, have to pay whatever price they set. And there's not enough talk about, people don't talk about this enough. People in the UK are afraid of money. It's been my experience that people are afraid of money. They're afraid of talking about it. I can't talk to someone and say, so, out of curiosity, how much do you make? People aren't very comfortable with that conversation. And they should be. They shouldn't be. Nobody should be ashamed. How much money do you make? Well, I'm working at this shop and I make minimum wage. Okay, fair enough. That's what you make. Can we do anything to help you improve that? Have you learned? Have you thought? Have you tried? Or maybe you're doing that through choice, and that's absolutely fine. And you can live the life that you want to live on minimum wage. Great. And that's fine. And then you have a conversation with someone. Oh, well, I don't really want to put a figure on it. Well, why not? Well, I don't really want people to know how much I earn. Why? What's to be ashamed of? Why are we ashamed of talking about money? It's not something that... It's not something I would broadcast on the air, but if somebody came up to me individually and said, let's have that conversation, absolutely sure. I'm happy to talk someone through it and go, yeah, I made money here, I made money here, and I made money here. That was a bad month. Didn't make so much money then. Penalty of being your own boss is some months you don't make anything. But, that all feeds into the economy, everything we make. And if you've got a CEO that's taken 100 billion in profit, how much tax has he paid on that? Now, some people will be shouting at the radio, none. He's found a loophole. He's not paying any. I assure you, he's probably paying tax somewhere along the line. Have you met our government over the last century? They've just put tax on tax on tax on tax on tax. Everything's taxed somewhere along the line. It's very difficult to get away with paying zero tax. And if you do, well done. But also, HMRC is probably looking for you because, they want their money. Or you're just not a British citizen. You're not actually conducting business officially in the UK, which unfortunately these big CEOs that are making 100 billion a year can't claim. We know they're making money in the UK, so they will be paying potentially up to 40% of that in tax. Now, as a government, that's your revenue coming in, and okay, the people are struggling and they don't want to be paying that much, and nobody wants to be paying that much, but you can afford it, so you're okay. And if I'm taking 40% of his 100 million or billion, well, 40% of that is a large sum of money. 100 million, 40% is what, 40 million? Or 400 million if we're talking about the billion. Okay, well, if he increases his prices and doubles them, if he doubles his prices, I get double the amount of tax. Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's not put a cap on that. And therein lies the fundamental problem, is that because it's not publicly owned and there's not enough competition, there will always be the ability to push up and exploit. Now, as Shaz said last week, the thing is, there's London and then there's the rest of the UK. London is like its own little economic centre, and the rest of the UK is somewhat different. So the UK does have one of the most unequal regional economies in Europe. London and the southeast outperform the northeast, Wales, and parts of the Midlands almost twice over. Poor transport links and lower educational attainment in some areas exacerbate these disparities and make them worse, but they're not the sole cause. In 2023, London's GDP per capita was nearly double that of the northeast. Yeah, it's huge. It's a massive difference. So, the government has this whole levelling up policy that it was working on. We should continue doing that, investing in education, investing in transport, investing in business hubs in suburbs and smaller areas. Make things attainable. And one of the biggest things that I think we really need to look at is we are spending, and this is something that I still can't get my head around. We're spending more than we're earning as a country, and we're borrowing money from other countries. Okay, and we owe, many millions, billions, trillions, possibly. Now, I don't know the exact figure, but when they say we owe trillions in debt, let's call it a trillion. Let's round it off. It's just a hypothetical. When they say we owe that in debt, who to? Okay, certainly some of it to other countries. World Bank. Okay. Well, surely the focus should be, as a country, to stop treating the country like it's not a business. Business UK, Great Britain, however you want to phrase it, is a business, and we are failing as a business. We are not profitable. We are losing money year on year. And so I think the biggest thing we could do to improve the UK economy is stop listening to politicians who aren't businessmen and let businessmen run the country, because they will run the country to be profitable. And the second the country is profitable, suddenly we will have, because can we get out of this amount of debt? Yes, we can. On a global scale, yes, we can. Absolutely, we can. It's doable. We get out of debt. Okay, cool. So, yes, things are we're going to struggle for a bit. Okay, but we get out of debt. Once we're out of debt, our money's our own, right? Well, okay. So we can start investing in X, Y, and Z. Now, if we take twice as long to get out of the debt, but get out of the debt slower, keep the country stable, and without the hardship, suddenly then you're on an upward streak. But everybody seems to look at the country as a country rather than as a company, as a business. And that brings us right back round to, near where we started last week, of accountability. If I, in my business, cost the business £100,000, you better believe I'm losing my job. Does that happen if you are part of the cabinet? Does that happen if you're part of the ruling government? No, it doesn't. And it should. And this arbitrary 4 years in, 4 years out, 5 years, it's too long. It's also not long enough. The contradiction. It's, if you start making really bad mistakes and upsetting everyone, it's too long. If you're making really good headway and you're doing good things, it's not long enough, because somebody's going to come in a few years and mess up all your hard work. Sometimes just because you're the ones that have done it. So in short, the economy has been going down. Can it be saved? Yes. What do we need to do? Education, invest, and stop treating running the country like it's not a company there to be made profitable, in this man's opinion. And other than that, I mean, I make it sound far simpler than it actually is. I mean, there's a whole host of things that go with all of this, but maybe we can deep dive into that on another session on another week. Until then, I've got about 20 seconds on this screen, 17 seconds on this screen. So I'm going to say an average of about 15 seconds left to say I hope everyone has a fantastic week, and please tune in next week. And we will talk about education next week, education in the business sector and education in the financial sector. Until then, have a great week. Take care.
Stay
Goodbye.
tuned to Salam